Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So, Terran Entertaining series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project and the Sega Saturn Core has been updated again. So you know we're going to go through the games list that SRG320 talked about in the GitHub patch notes and test some other titles as well to talk about whether or not they've gotten better, stayed the same, or have regressed ever so slightly, because there's a lot of updates coming in, rewriting portions of the core, so we want to check things out. Before we get too far involved, though, do me a huge favor, down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel some kind of want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But one of the games that SRG320 mentioned in the GitHub commits was the original Tomb Raider. And this is one of those games, obviously most well known for being on the PlayStation 1, but the Sega Saturn version is unique and interesting in its own right, and it's a game that I don't feel like I've ever tested on the current core. If you remember me testing this, tell me down below. It just does not ring a bell, but honestly, I've tested hundreds of games at this point in time. From the FMV intro cut sequence here all the way into the game, you're going to be getting a great experience, and now all of the audio seems to be working without clipping any of the channels. A lot of the most recent tests we've been talking about audio improvements, and that's been an area in which the core has been constantly iterated on. A lot of games would just drop their audio, or they would have audio with distortion, and sometimes you would get completely random noise coming out of your speakers. SRG320 has been working on a lot of that, and it definitely shows in a ton of titles, and Tomb Raider is one of them. There's not a lot of soundtrack to listen to, so we're just going to be talking about the overall gameplay flow here, but otherwise it seems to be relatively good. There are a little bit of weird pop-ins on some of the actual quadrilaterals, but I'd have to go back and actually watch an original capture or take my game off the shelf, because honestly, I remember the PlayStation 1 version way more than the Sega Saturn, so it's hard to say where an issue with the core starts and where weirdness with the actual Sega Saturn implementation of the graphics ends. Same as when we're playing Burning Rangers, this seemed to be pushing the Sega Saturn hardware to some sort of 3D limit, so I'd have to go back and see. But if you're familiar with this game, if it's your favorite Sega Saturn game, tell me down below how you think this looks. I do think that every once in a while some of the textures are loading in incorrectly, but that could still be in-engine. But as far as the performance is concerned, as far as the control overlord is concerned, this all just seems to be Tomb Raider as you remember, and that is the most impressive part. And I know a lot of times we alternate between 2D videos and 3D videos as far as the games are concerned, and that is because I'd like to see what VDP1 and VDP2 are doing, whether or not the Saturn's actually handling any 3D, because the way that the Sega Saturn actually handles 3D is quite interesting. Digital Foundry actually did a video on Tomb Raider a few years ago and showed how the Sega Saturn actually interprets the 3D, and it's very interesting. If I remember, I will leave a link in the description below to that particular video, because I had never actually seen that. And you'll see here again, as we drop down and fight this bear, always there ready to maul you, the performance is holding up. This is definitely a game that isn't a perfect frame rate on Sega Saturn, but as we're playing here on the core, it seems to be adhering to what the frame rate would be on real hardware. And that's what you want out of an FPGA core, not better performance, not worse, but one-to-one with the original hardware. Now let's take another look at Guardian Heroes. This has been a very interesting testing week for this game. Early on an earlier core this week, there were a ton of regressions on Guardian Heroes. It was slowing down, dropping audio, and pretty much doing everything you wouldn't want it to do. But the core was updated again, and Guardian Heroes got all of that performance back. Some of the sound effects can still be a little bit hot and a little bit crunchy, but this is definitely working a lot better than it has in the last couple of cores, and it seems like the one game that sees regressions more than any other in the core development process is going to be Guardian Heroes. Maybe we just know that more because it is one of the Saturn's best games of all time, so people are way more inclined to test it every core, but this one has definitely seen some ups and downs as far as performance is concerned. Now the good thing on the performance front is this is now again rock solid stable in the frame rate. All of the graphics seem to be drawing correctly, all of the controls are in there. You will get a little bit of crunch and audio clipping on some of the ladder sound effects, but otherwise it is much improved, and that is always awesome to see, because this is one of those games pretty much everyone who's a fan of Sega Saturn definitely has played this at least once, if not a metric crap ton of times. The only issue, and I will show you in a moment, is it does seem to want to freeze every once in a while, which is definitely still something pretty much any game in the core can experience at random. Some games definitely more than others, but you'll see here in the combat sequences, everything is fluid, everything is fast, it's not slowing down anymore, and that's something that we saw in previous cores. You'd basically just have a situation in which you would have some slowdown when there were some explosion effects on screen. You'll see here once we get into the story, it's going to give you this nice fade out, and you're going to see all this great art, which is drawing correctly, and then the game is going to give you a choice as to where to go next. Follow along with this video. You'll see here we're going to pick a location, and from there it's going to go to black. like it's trying to load the next area. Unfortunately, the minute it tries to load the next area, it stays black and never actually comes back into the game, which is unfortunate. But as far as the FMV intro sequence is concerned, that is still rock solid stable as well. So it seems like the core definitely still has in some spots a slight issue in continuing to load data, but I'm sure that will be improved in the future. But as far as the performance on Guardian Heroes is concerned, it's back to the same frame rate you would get on real Sega Saturn hardware, and that's what really matters for now. We'll definitely check in on this game again when we get a new core update, but that's the situation as of today. Now moving on to another game. This is a Godzilla game, and if you would believe it or not, I only knew about this a week ago. I do not know how a Godzilla game on Sega Saturn escaped me. I saw this in an article and I said, wow, there's a Godzilla game that I don't know about. That was very surprising to me, so of course it's one of the first things I wanted to test, and of course I picked up a copy for myself. This just works. This is so much fun, and if anyone who's a translator out there who loves the Sega Saturn is listening right now, please, please, please translate Godzilla Archipelago Shock. I am so curious to hear what's going on in this game from a story perspective, and it would also make it a lot easier to play. But how else could you talk about Godzilla without talking about giant kaiju battles? This is an RTS game where you basically have to fight the kaiju, and that is 10 out of 10 right up my alley. And the soundtrack and the sound effects are good as well. Listen, and I'll be right back. Maybe a little crunch in the sound effects in the gameplay, but I'd have to check against original hardware, and again, for some strange reason, I just didn't know this game existed. And as far as many games as I own and as many games as I know about, I do still get surprised every once in a while, and this one is definitely one that surprised me. Or maybe I knew about it and completely forgot. That does happen too. But this was a totally fun game to test on the core, and big thanks to Andy D for helping with the captures again, because it's a game that I feel like 99 out of 100 you have not going to know about and have never seen footage of, and it's always fun to talk about a deep cut Sega Saturn game on the core, because these are the type of titles that people don't instantaneously run and test every new core. Sure, we're going to check Virtua Fighter 2, Nights into Dreams, Guardian Heroes, things like that, but no one's going to go check an RTS Godzilla game unless it is their favorite Sega Saturn game of all time, and I'm assuming this Godzilla game is nobody's favorite Sega Saturn game of all time. But honestly, this is something I really would love to see translated. I want to know what's going on, and I want to be able to play easier, but I'll tell you right now, it works on the current Sega Saturn core. Other games that have been marked as improvements, this is Dark Seed. If you've never heard of it before, it is a point-and-click adventure game that is heavily influenced by the art of H.R. Giger or Geiger. I've seen two different pronunciations and everyone pretty much corrects me in the comments, so I gave you both. One of them must be right. This is the type of game that you either love or hate. I grew up with point-and-click adventure games. It's one of my favorite genres of all time. If you didn't grow up with it, you probably don't care that much about the title, but definitely check Dark Seed out. It is a very inventive and creepy game from start to finish, and definitely something that is intriguing. And this has seen some graphical improvements on the most recent core as well, so much so that SRG320 notated it down in the GitHub commits. And this has also seen some audio improvements as well. I'm going to give you a very quick sample of the soundtrack, not just so you can hear that it sounds good, but that you can hear just how weird and strange it really is. 15 seconds and I'll be right back. It's hard to even call that a soundtrack. I'd say it's more of a soundscape, and it's definitely intended to be eerie and disconcerting, and that's the entire vibe of Dark Seed. And again, if you've never played this game before, I can't recommend you check it out enough. Now, I've heard some rumblings and seen a few previews of this potentially getting an English translation, but honestly, it is in Japanese, at least the version I am playing here. But all being said, this is just another game that is improved on the current core, and it's such a unique experience. It was so much fun in the 90s when you would get a few point-and-click adventure games games coming over to PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, and even Nintendo 64. It's definitely a genre that you either love or hate, but honestly, this game has so many vibes, such incredible graphics, and such an inspiration as far as the subject matter is concerned. As you can tell here, it is well worth your time checking out. No matter how you play it, definitely give Dark Seed a shot. But that's the current situation on the current Sega Saturn Core as of the making of this video. I will definitely be doing some more tests. If there's any games you want to see retested, leave me a comment down below and give me some recommendations. I can't promise I'll hit each and every one of them, but I'll definitely do as many as possible. But the Sega Saturn Core keeps improving. SRG 320 keeps updating it with great patch notes on GitHub, and we'll continue to test as we keep getting more cores. But short of that, we are done. Go download the most recent core, play some Sega Saturn, and have some fun. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.